Consciousness doesn't make any sense. Sights, sounds, smells, textures, the warmth of love, the sting of sadness, the coldness of heartbreak. Why do we experience any of it? We've mapped out the entire observable universe, measured every single neuron in our brains, and we've even trained machines to think, speak, and act just like us. And still, we don't understand the most fundamental thing about human existence. Why does it feel like anything to be you? Why is there a little person inside of your head? And a story of your life that exists through time. Although it's something that every single person who has ever existed has experienced, consciousness is one of the most difficult things to explain or understand. Philosophers, mystics, scientists, and religious leaders have all come to the same uncomfortable conclusion. Consciousness isn't as straightforward as it appears. It unfolds in levels, and the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. So let's dive in. Level 1, deep sleep. It's the most ordinary, yet the most mysterious state of consciousness. We enter it every night without thinking, slipping past the edge of thought into a void, so empty that even the concept of it being a void disappears. The entire world dissolves, the self vanishes, and even dreams don't exist at this level. All there is a silent stillness that's vast and impenetrable. Although we experience this every night, it still exists beyond the realm of our understanding. Just like you can't understand what it's like to be blind by closing your eyes, you can't understand what deep sleep feels like by taking a nap. All we do know is that one moment you're awake, fully aware of your surroundings, and the next moment you're awake and fully aware of your surroundings. But for a few hours in between, you are nowhere, completely oblivious to your surroundings. According to neuroscience, you're in what's called the delta wave state. It's a deep, slow rhythm that's pulsing through your brain at less than 4 cycles per second. It's the body's most restorative mode, where the nervous system resets, tissues heal, and your memory consolidates. This state is a necessary maintenance cycle when the mind is turned off so that the body can heal itself. But on the inside, something far stranger is happening. In this state, experience itself ceases to exist. There is no space, no time, and no you. It's as if awareness folds back into its source the way an ocean wave returns to the sea and forgets that it ever rose, that it was ever a wave. Philosophers describe it as a kind of temporary annihilation, one without suffering or fear. It's like death being shy. You don't know that you're gone, and yet you awaken, and you somehow know that you were. That paradox, to be without being aware of being, has haunted even the greatest thinkers for centuries. In the Mandukya Upanishad, it's called Sushupti, a state where the self rests in its unmanifest form. Buddhists regard it as a glimpse of nirvana without enlightenment, while modern philosophers see it as the ground zero of consciousness, the point at which the line between awareness and non-awareness blurs. And yet, even here, the seed of consciousness exists. Something knows that nothing is happening, otherwise you would wake up each morning and you would be completely confused as to what had just happened. So it seems that even at this bottom layer, awareness is still there. It only withdraws, watching quietly from behind the curtain. In that sense, deep sleep is both an ending and a new beginning. It is the nightly death of self and the daily resurrection of consciousness. Each time you wake up, you're reborn from that void, carried upward through the layers of mind that rebuild your world anew. The dreamer reassembles, the senses reopen, and the illusion of continuity resumes. But for a few hours each night, you cease to exist. And that, perhaps, is the purest form of peace the mind may ever know, at least on this plane of existence. Beyond that layer of emptiness, there is creativity beyond human comprehension. Level 2. Dreaming. Fragments of thought begin to move. Images shimmer into existence, and without opening your eyes, you find yourself somewhere else entirely. This is dreaming, the first world consciousness creates for itself. In this realm, reality is all self-generated. The senses have shut down, and the body lies motionless. Yet, within the theater of the brain, entire universes are created. Mountains rise and vanish. Faces from memory blend with strangers whom you've never seen before. You experience an entire lifetime in a few minutes. One moment, you're flying through an endless sky, and the next, you're trapped in a room without any doors or windows. And the strangest thing of all is that it all feels real, or at least as real as your everyday waking life. From the scientific perspective, dreaming starts after deep sleep and during REM sleep, the phase of sleep in mammals that comes with rapid eye movements and more brain activity, which leads to more dreams. Your mind is flooded with emotions, imagination, and different narratives. Your body, for the most part, is still stuck in an unconscious state, but the mind is now free to wander, to explore the world it creates for itself without any boundaries. Philosophically, the dream acts as a mirror, a miniature version of existence itself. In Hindu philosophy, this is swapna, the inner world that reflects and distorts waking reality. The Greeks saw dreams as messages from the gods. Freud saw them as windows into the unconscious. Modern neuroscience calls them memory alchemy, where the brain mixes fragments of the day into symbolic narratives. Yet, none of these explanations capture the uncanny truth. When you dream, you are both the creator and the inhabitant of your world. Inside a dream, you are the laws of physics, the architecture of space, and the author of time. Every voice you hear is your own mind speaking back to you. Every face is carved from your memories. The dreamer and the dream are one and the same. You build a world, forget that you built it, and then wander through it as a character. But just like waking life, dreams carry emotion, consequence, and even transformation. A nightmare can make your heart race. A lucid dream can make you feel like a superhero. A positive vision can give you peace that lasts for years. For something not real, dreams leave remarkably real footprints. They reveal the creative nature of consciousness and a scary thought that reality, even our waking reality, may just be another dream. And perhaps that's their deeper lesson. Every night, as your mind weaves impossible worlds and convinces itself that they're true, it rehearses the same act it performs during the day, constructing experience from within. The only difference is that in dreams, you sometimes remember that you're the only one imagining it at all. Level 3. Waking. As you wake, you notice the red marks on your face, proof that you maybe enjoyed this sleep a little too much. Your eyes squint, struggling to adjust to the orange rays of the yellow morning sun spilling through the window. Outside, the green grass smiles as it's kissed by the morning dew, beneath a bright blue sky where shades of indigo fade softly into violet on the horizon. The last remnants of dusk from the night are gone. You are now fully awake, and your consciousness opens to the complete spectrum of experience. Not just colors, but also sounds, scents, sensations, and emotions. The orchestra of awareness that gives our world a shared meaning. This is waking consciousness, the state we spend most of our lives in, where thought, perception, and action blend into the grand illusion of solidity. Here, the mind and the senses form a partnership, producing what we call reality. You feel the weight of your body, the texture of air against your skin, the rhythm of passing time. The brain processes billions of signals each second, sorting chaos into order, randomness into patterns. Every sound, color, and shape is translated into electrical signals that are then interpreted as a three-dimensional hallucination that's just consistent enough to work. Neuroscience calls it the default mode network, the mental system that constructs the ongoing narrative of me and you, the observer at the center of the universe. But the longer you stare at waking life, the more fragile it begins to look. Sensory illusions tell us that we can't even trust our own senses. And even when there are no illusions, our limited senses compared to other living things tell us that we are not experiencing true reality, only the version of it that we can observe. Some cold-blooded animals can see infrared lights, bats and whales have echolocation, and animals like cows, deer, and butterflies can even detect and use the Earth's magnetic field. Even within humans, some people have synesthesia and can see shapes and colors when they hear music. They are experiencing the world in a completely different way than all of us will ever be able to. So, if that's the case, how can we say for certainty what the real reality is? Time stretches or shrinks depending on attention. The mind edits and fills gaps, erases details, and fabricates continuity out of fragments of our experiences. You never see the world as it is, only as your nervous system allows. The brain isn't recording reality, it's rendering it, like a simulation running in real time. Philosophers have wrestled with this for centuries. Descartes wondered how we could ever be sure that we aren't dreaming right now. Kant argued that the world we perceive is not the thing in itself, but merely a mental model filtered through structures of cognition. Modern thinkers like Donald Hoffman describe perception as a user interface, an evolutionary design meant for survival, not to express truth. In other words, your senses don't reveal reality. They hide it behind icons that are useful enough to keep you alive. And yet, despite all of this uncertainty, waking life feels different from a dream. There's resistance here, gravity, consequence, the shared agreement of others who see the same sky as you do. This is what we call consensus reality, a communal hallucination maintained through collective trust. When you wake up, you don't just enter a world, you enter a shared simulation, one reinforced by language, memory, and the stability of physical laws. But even this stability is conditional. The world we wake up into is built from patterns of experience, and experience is built from the mind. Every morning, consciousness reassembles itself, telling a story of what it calls today, forgetting that yesterday's story was equally invented. Waking life is not the opposite of dreaming. It's simply the most persistent dream, one vivid enough to convince you and everyone around you that it's real. For most people, this is where consciousness stops. We spend our lives cycling through these three familiar states, waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, calling that cycle the totality of experience. The mind rarely pauses long enough to notice that something constant exists beneath all of them. We wake, we sleep, we dream, and we assume that's all awareness is, and what it's meant to do. But there are deeper layers still. Hidden states that reveal themselves only when the surface of the mind stands completely still. When thought quiets and attention turns inward, a new dimension of consciousness begins to open. Beyond the noise of perception and the theater of thought lies something entirely different. Awareness itself, pure and silent, untouched by the world around it. Level 4, transcendental consciousness. Beyond the turbulence of waking, dreaming, and sleep, there lies another state, one that doesn't fit neatly into the usual map of the mind. It's not unconsciousness, not imagination, not ordinary awareness. It is transcendental consciousness. It's a pure and silent awareness that is aware of itself. Here the mind is awake, but utterly still. Thoughts slow down drastically and then vanish. The body remains, the senses remain, but attention has turned inward, resting on the source of awareness itself. It's a state that meditators across cultures have described for millennia, the experience of being without doing, of awareness detached from the machinery of thought. In this state, consciousness is no longer directed at anything, it simply is. From a scientific view, something remarkable is happening. Normally, the brain's left and right hemispheres are somewhat asynchronous. Different regions fire independently and chaotically, especially when the mind is active or distracted. But EEG readings of advanced meditators show something different. The electric signals across both hemispheres of their brains start to synchronize. Their waveforms line up almost like musical instruments playing the same frequency. As the inner mind stills, so does the brain, and its usual chaos is replaced by harmony and stillness. Philosophically, transcendental consciousness is the first glimpse of the self beyond the self. The Upanishads describe it as Turiya, the fourth state, beyond waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. Buddhists call it emptiness, not because it lacks content, but because it lacks boundaries. Descartes said, "I think, therefore I am." But in this state, even thinking dissolves, and yet, I am remains. There is a profound simplicity to this awareness. It doesn't judge, interpret, or analyze. It just observes. For a few moments, the endless stream of thought that defines waking life goes quiet, and the observer realizes that they were never the thoughts at all, but the space in which those thoughts appear. Many describe the experience as a feeling of returning home. Only home is not a place, but a condition of being that feels more familiar than anything else. It's as if the mind has spent its whole life facing outward, looking for meaning in the world, only to turn around and find that what it sought was the one who was looking. In transcendental consciousness, awareness becomes self-luminous. The observer and the observed merge into a single existence. It's not an escape from the world, but the discovery of what remains when the world disappears, a consciousness untouched by thought, time, or form. At this point, consciousness begins to step beyond what science can comfortably describe. The instruments still record patterns, the brain still hums with coherence, but something about the experience slips through the cracks of measurement. Logic, which once seemed sturdy, starts to tremble. This is where philosophy takes over, where awareness begins to question its own nature and language itself starts to blur. If the mind can be aware without thought, what exactly is doing the knowing? Oh, what is the I that remains when the story of me falls silent? These aren't questions for neuroscience anymore. They're riddles of existence itself. Level 5, Cosmic Consciousness. Eventually, something extraordinary happens. The silence of transcendental awareness stops fading when you open your eyes. The stillness remains even as you move through the world. This is cosmic consciousness, the moment when inner and outer awareness coexist, when the witness behind experience no longer disappears when the experience unfolds. Here, consciousness no longer flickers between opposites. You can think, speak, act, and feel, yet somewhere beneath the surface, a deep, unmoving stillness hums, untouched by any of it. There's joy and sorrow, gain and loss, but all of it happens within a larger, unbroken awareness that simply observes it all. Life continues as before, but your relationship with it is no longer the same. You are no longer fully in the story. You're watching the story from a distance and, at the same time, living it up close. Science might describe this as continuous meta-awareness, a sustained activation of the brain's frontal monitoring system that tracks internal and external experience simultaneously. Heart rate and brainwave patterns show a balance rarely seen, coherence between the body's alertness and the mind's serenity. Yet what the instruments can't measure is the feeling itself, the quiet astonishment of being awake within the waking. Philosophically, this is the state where self-knowledge becomes direct. The Upanishads describe it as the realization of Atman, the inner self, distinct from the ever-changing play of thoughts and sensations. You begin to see that the body, emotions, and personality are not you, but are expressions of something larger. The witnessing awareness that once was a fleeting meditative glimpse becomes a permanent backdrop. You don't lose your individuality, you just stop mistaking it for the whole truth. The world still moves, but you are no longer swept away by it. The emotions that once consumed you become waves rippling across the surface of an ocean. Suffering still arises, but so does unshakable calm. The recognition that even pain is a movement within consciousness, not outside of it. You become both the participant and the spectator, both the actor and the stage. This is what many mystics call the witness state, the dawning of enlightenment, the first steady awakening. It's not otherworldly or distant, it's ordinary life, but experienced from a higher vantage point. You still walk and talk and breathe, but now you do so while simultaneously resting in the infinite. In cosmic consciousness, the self and the universe begin to mirror each other. You start to sense that the awareness within you and the intelligence that animates the cosmos might be the same thing, two expressions of a single universal mind. The individual soul and the cosmic soul are not separate entities, but reflections meeting in still water. And once you see that, the line between inner and outer reality begins to dissolve. Level 6. God consciousness. At some point, awareness begins to shift again. The silent witness that once observed the world from a distance now starts to feel intimately connected to it, as if that same stillness is pulsing through everything you see. This is God consciousness, a state where perception itself becomes sacred, and every aspect of the universe radiates with living intelligence. In this state, consciousness doesn't just witness the world, it feels it. The tree outside your window no longer seems like an object. It breathes, it vibrates, it glows with quiet divinity. The line between the perceiver and the perceived softens, replaced by a sense of reverence that permeates every existence. The same awareness that once sat silently within now begins to overflow, touching everything it counters with love. Neuroscientifically, this shift can be glimpsed in patterns of highly synchronized gamma activity, often observed in advanced meditators experiencing profound compassion or awe. Emotional and sensory centers of the brain begin to merge, producing a kind of refined perception, reality felt not just through the senses but through the heart. But science can only describe the mechanics, it can't capture the meaning. What actually happens is that consciousness expands from neutrality into devotion, from witnessing the universe to falling in love with it. Philosophically, God consciousness has appeared in nearly every spiritual tradition. In the Vedic texts, it's described as the blossoming of Sat Chit Ananda, being, consciousness, and bliss, the triad of divine experience. Christian mystics call it theosis, union with God through love. Sufis sang of it as ishq-i hachichi, the divine passion that burns away separation. Each points to the same realization. The universe is not a cold mechanism, but a living expression of consciousness, and that consciousness is inherently good, intelligent, and beautiful. In this state, love ceases to be an emotion and becomes a perception, a way of seeing. You don't feel love for the world, you see through love. Every sound, color, and form feels imbued with the same sacred essence that animates you. Compassion becomes effortless, because everything around you feels like an extension of your own being. Even pain and decay begin to shimmer with hidden purpose. God consciousness transforms the intellect into reverence. The mind no longer seeks to control or analyze reality, it bows before it. Every atom becomes a hymn, every breath a prayer. The divine is not something else, not above or beyond, it is here, unfolding through every heartbeat, every sunrise, every ordinary moment that you once overlooked. In the previous level, you realize that you are a consciousness watching the universe. In this one, you realize that consciousness itself is divine, and so is everything it creates. The world becomes a cathedral of awareness, and you, a witness in awe of its infinity. Level 7. Unity Consciousness. At the last level lies a state where even the witness disappears. The boundary between observer and observed, between self and world, subject and object, disappears completely. This is unity consciousness, the highest expression of awareness, where the universe knows itself through you, and you know yourself as the universe. Here all distinctions fall away. Inside and outside, mind and matter, life and death, all of it merges into a single, seamless field of being. It's not that you perceive unity, rather you are unity. The infinite doesn't feel distant anymore. It's the very substance of your own awareness. There's no longer a self looking out at the world. There's only consciousness, infinite and self-luminous, flowing through every form and thought like light through glass. From a scientific standpoint, unity consciousness pushes the limit of what we can even measure. Some neuroscientists speak of non-dual awareness, a brain state characterized by synchronized coherence across regions, where self-referential processing all but disappears. But this is only the shadow of something that can't truly be quantified, because the experience of unity is not in the brain at all. It's the field in which the brain, the world, and all of existence arise together. Philosophically, this state has been described in countless ways. In Vedanta, it is the realization of Brahman, the one without a second, pure being, consciousness, bliss. In Mahayana Buddhism, it's sunyata, the emptiness that is full, where form and void are one and the same. Mystics of every tradition have spoken of it in paradoxes. The drop that becomes the ocean and yet remains a drop. The flame that recognizes itself in every other flame. In unity consciousness, the sense of time dissolves. The future and past collapse into an eternal present, a boundless now that contains all moments at once. The mind, once so desperate to grasp and define, falls silent. What remains is not thought, not feeling, not perception, but pure existence, radiant and complete. Every moment, every breath, every heartbeat is seen as the motion of the universe itself. There is no longer a personal God or an external divinity to perceive, because there's nothing outside. The cosmos itself is sacred, the divine dreaming itself into galaxies, into atoms, and into you. The love that began in God consciousness now expands beyond any object, becoming the very nature of awareness. It is love without direction, joy without cause, being without end. And from this vantage point, you see that consciousness never climbed anywhere. It was always whole, always infinite. The latter was only a way for the mind to understand what the self already knew. The deep sleep, the dreams, the waking, the silence, the witness, the love, all were movements within the same infinite ocean of being. At this final level, the search ends because the seeker has dissolved into what was being sought all along. There is only one reality, one consciousness, one existence, and it has always been you. From dreamless sleep to cosmic unity, the levels of consciousness go deeper into itself. Each level feels like an ascent, but what if it's really a circle, a return to the source that was never left? We begin in darkness, unaware of awareness, and end in light, realizing that even the darkness was made of it. Science traces these states through waves and frequencies, mapping consciousness in electrical patterns. Philosophy traces them through language and metaphor, through the fragile bridge of meaning. Yet both of them point towards the same unspoken mystery, that consciousness is not something we have, it's what we are. The body changes, the thoughts change, the dreams shift, but the awareness behind them remains untouched, eternal and self-luminous. Maybe consciousness doesn't emerge from the brain like smoke from fire. Maybe the brain is the instrument and consciousness is the musician. Maybe what we call I is not a separate spark, but the whole fire reflected in a single flame. Across the 7 levels, awareness moves from unknowing to knowing, from separation to unity, from silence to song. In deep sleep, it rests as potential. In dreams, it imagines. In waking, it creates. In transcendence, it remembers itself. In cosmic awareness, it witnesses. In divine love, it celebrates. And in unity, it returns home, only to realize it never truly left. Perhaps consciousness isn't climbing towards some final state, but unfolding infinitely, like a mirror reflecting itself forever. The mystics called it the play of God, Lila, the universe experiencing its own reflection through every possible form. Every eye that opens, every mind that awakens, every life that begins and ends. All of it, consciousness exploring itself. So, maybe there aren't 7 levels at all. Maybe there is only one, appearing as many, dreaming as us. And maybe the ultimate truth of consciousness isn't that it's hidden somewhere waiting to be found. Maybe it's that it's been looking through our eyes the whole entire time.
Take a deep breath. Can you feel that immediate sense of calm? Like a weight has been lifted off of your shoulders, even if just for a second. If you're watching this right now, there's a huge chance that you've just sat down after a busy day, or perhaps you're still in the middle of one. A day filled with writing emails, driving to the grocery store, and walking the dog. In the midst of this routine, you might have had a fight with your partner, your parent, your boss, or coworker. Maybe you didn't get that promotion you've been looking forward to, or the knee injury you've been nursing is acting up. Take another deep breath. Did you feel it this time? That sense of release? The knee doesn't hurt so bad after all. That fight with your partner? It isn't such a huge deal anymore. The promotion you didn't get? You still have time to try again. Or perhaps, with a calm head, you could re-strategize and find a new job. It's miraculous what a single deep breath can do, how it can settle us. Our breath is not just a tool to live. It's a tool to heal, to focus. Mastering breathing and learning to use it to heal is meditation. And it might just have the power to rewire our brains. Let's keep breathing. To fully understand what meditation is, we have to go back 2,600 years ago when Buddha taught meditative concentration as a key component of spiritual awakening. According to Buddha, when we meditate, we feel our heartbeat. We're connected to our loved ones, to our ancestors, to the world that came before us. Knowing that none of our life, even the stressful parts, would be possible without it. As we sink into our breath, our worries begin to wash away, and we start to feel a connection to something deeper and greater than ourselves. Meditation is not about adhering to any rules. You don't have to be a monk locked up in a monastery to apply this practice to your life. It's just about breathing. For me, it can be simply taking 10 minutes a day to focus on my breath, to pull me away from the stress of life and the worries it comes with. For you, it might be a quick moment on the subway or in an Uber on your daily commute. For others, it could be a daily hour-long session, seated on a ceremonial pillow overlooking a vast, beautiful landscape. All of it is meditation. No matter where we are or how long we close our eyes, we breathe for the same reasons. To relax, to ease the stress of daily living, and perhaps answer some of life's most challenging questions. How do I build better relationships? Who do I want to be 5 years from now? How do I live a happier life? Happiness. That sense of ease and contentment. Like things are exactly as they should be. We know how hard it is to attain, but we still want it. When we're young, it seems so simple. A trip to the candy store, a new puppy, hugs from a sibling. But as adults, it feels like we're faced with a perpetual crisis, seemingly all around us. Insurmountable obstacles that are all-consuming. Things that make that argument with your partner or that tense email exchange all the more difficult to process. And it seems to be getting worse. A recession, the Great Resignation, barely surviving a worldwide pandemic. It's no wonder that global happiness fell by 10% between 2011 and 2021. In a world of crazy, what do we do? How do we get that feeling we got as kids in a candy store? Well, we need to turn inward. So go ahead. Relax your shoulders, your face, your fingers. Feel your body grounded to the earth beneath you. Feel that connection to the universe around you. Realize that you have all the tools to reduce stress and anxiety, to lower your blood pressure and soothe that persistent pain, to increase self-awareness and compassion, both for yourself and for others. But how can all of this be possible just by breathing? Take another big breath, another moment of letting go. You feel it in your body. Now try to feel it in your mind. What's happening inside us is called neuroplasticity, the gradual rewiring of our brains. Neuroplasticity is the ability of our neural pathways to change. You see, just like our bodies are malleable, so are our brains. Like the muscles in the rest of our body, the circuits of our brain that are reinforced and strengthened are those that we use the most, and those that we don't use as frequently will atrophy. The primary areas of modern scientific research in mindfulness are around improvements to focus and reduction of anxiety and depression. Most of the studies that have been performed to this effect use a tool called a fMRI, which records brain activity. If you've ever had an MRI, it's like that, but with moving activity imaging instead of a still photo. In one Yale University study using the fMRI technique, the brain's default mode network was more active in experienced meditators. This network consists of the parts of our brain that are associated with cognitive control and self-monitoring, specifically the medial prefrontal cortex, which sits right at the front of your head, and the posterior cingulate cortex, located in the middle of your brain. This evidence points to the fact that when we meditate, it's like exercising our default mode network so it's ready to put in the work when the need arises. And the needs increase in number every day. It's not just that one fight with our partner, but the infestation of doubts about our future with them. It's not just that one missed promotion, but the fear that we'll never fulfill our goals or become what we've always dreamt of ourselves. We get anxious. We get depressed. We lose our motivation. But the more we breathe, the better we are at monitoring and controlling these feelings. So again, I say, breathe. It's so easy to think of all the ways in which we're failing, to let our heads run wild with the thoughts of self-doubt and inadequacy. We convince ourselves that we're not good enough, that we can't solve the obstacles we're faced with. Instead of giving up, can we ground ourselves? Can we access the default mode network and improve our problem solving? Can we visualize the rewiring taking place to give us more self-awareness? That's it. We're doing it. Right now. Together. But our mind keeps wandering. We want to space out, to get preoccupied by anything other than this moment. Everyone tells us to stay present, but it's hard. Especially when worry seeps in. So often, we tune out. We disengage. We dissociate. We subconsciously choose to not listen and notice the world and people around us. This is known as habituation, the tendency to stop paying attention to new information or stimulus. Do people have a hard time getting your attention? Do you feel a little desensitized to your surroundings? Recenter your mind. Focus and feel the world around you. Breathe. Think about the books on your shelf, the mug on your coffee table, your plant by the window. Feel the air on your skin, the scent that fills your nostrils. Reacclimate to this moment. Be present. As you do this, distracting thoughts will try to pry their way into your mind. They will build and build until you feel debilitated, like you're losing control. We want to fight this anxiety, these feelings of depression. But the more we try to fight it, the stronger it becomes. We want to run from them, but we have nowhere to go. So we continue to breathe, we continue to rewire. We use our body and our mind to increase connectivity between the amygdala, deep down near our brainstem, and the medial prefrontal cortex in the front of our brain, to stabilize our emotions, to combat the inevitable stress, anxiety, and depression that being a human entails. In the 1970s, a Harvard Medical School professor named this the relaxation response, as it works in direct opposition to the fight-or-flight response we feel when these worries keep popping up. For some, these feelings run deeper than just ruminating anxiety or mounting depression. It's trauma that threatens to derail each and every moment of bliss that we experience. You're not alone in these feelings. 6% of the United States' population will have PTSD at some point in their lives. That's about 12 million adults in a given year. And this is only a small portion of people who have experienced mind-altering trauma. The sad reality for these people is that there is no one-size-fits-all treatment. There is no proven regimen. Soldiers returning from war, victims of crimes, individuals with a traumatic childhood. Now, though, research is beginning to show that all of these millions of people could potentially benefit from mindfulness training. Both the National Institute of Health and the US Department of Defense discovered that meditation is emerging as a promising means to deal with the effects of PTSD. And it all starts with that breath. The one that we take is more focused than the last. That is intentional, directed at something festering inside of us. We might wonder if something as simple as taking in oxygen could really be the key. Yes, the breathing feels good at the moment, but is it really possible that these feelings are as scientifically rooted as some claim them to be? The sad reality is that the science on meditation is lacking, because studying this practice isn't just about the brain. It's about something much more ephemeral. However, what we do know is how important oxygen is to the brain. Consider this. Our brains use about a fifth of our body's total oxygen supply to send messages and nerve signals to other parts of our body. If the brain doesn't get oxygen, within just 5 minutes, its cells will begin to die. With this, we can see just how important breathing intentionally is. So where does that leave us? Are we practitioners or are we skeptics? Or can we be both? The lack of accessibility to basic healthcare is a widespread global crisis, and half of the world is without essential health services. For those without access, or for anyone else like me who is simply curious about its effects, we should be able to find peace in the information that is available, although limited at this time. Today, meditation is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Everywhere you turn, people are trying to sell you special mats, get you to sign up for their classes, pay for their membership services, visit their brick-and-mortar stores for coaching. Headspace, one of the most popular meditation apps out there, thanks in part to its animated Netflix series, has been downloaded 65 million times. Its parent company, Headspace Health, is worth an estimated $3 billion, and has partnered with more than 2,000 companies to provide the app free to their employees. And that's only one of the multitude of options that are available out there. It can be overwhelming, can't it? We find ourselves in the paradox of choice, having so many options that instead of facilitating our quest for happiness and relaxation, we feel stressed all over again trying to pick one. Or even worse, we feel like that peace and calm that we seek is hidden behind a paywall, when in reality, it isn't. But wait, we've gone down a rabbit hole. We found a way to make the simple task of breathing stressful. We were almost sucked in again. But let's pause. Forget about all of that, and let's just remember to breathe. Let's channel our breath to the tension in our neck, to the thoughts racing through our mind, to lighting up the parts of our brain that can help regulate the stress we're feeling. We notice our room, our body, the world around us. We ground ourselves again. We breathe. Because breathing is not just freeing, it's free.
Every night, something extraordinary happens to you, so familiar that you barely notice it. You climb into bed, close your eyes, and slowly lose contact with the world. The room around you disappears. The concerns that occupied your mind throughout the day dissolve into silence. The identity you spend every waking moment protecting and maintaining fades away. Then, for several hours, you enter a state that remains one of the greatest mysteries in human existence. You dream. Dreams have always fascinated us. Ancient civilizations treated them as messages from the gods. Religious traditions viewed them as portals to deeper truths. Psychologists saw them as windows into the hidden architecture of the mind. Despite centuries of disagreement about what dreams are, one intuition has persisted across cultures and eras. The feeling that dreams are revealing something that we can't normally see. Just as we can't see the inside of a black hole, yet we can observe its effects, and cannot directly observe a quantum system, yet we can learn about it through the traces that it leaves behind, perhaps dreams are traces of something hidden beneath the surface of conscious experience. And in one of the strangest discoveries in modern physics, scientists recently found that a hidden quantum system could reveal itself through something called an echo, which begs the question, what if dreams are doing the same thing? So, in 2024, researchers at Google announced a breakthrough involving a quantum computer known as Willow. The achievement was technical and highly specialized. To learn more about that, watch our video on quantum computing. But buried within it was an idea that feels strangely relevant to the mystery of dreaming. The researchers developed a method known as a quantum echo. Now, to understand what this means, think about how bats navigate in complete darkness. They can't see the cave around them, so instead they emit high-frequency sounds throughout the walls of the cave, and then they listen to the echoes that bounce back. From these echoes, they can build a surprisingly accurate map of their surroundings. And humans, us, we do something similar with sonar. By sending sound waves into the depths of the ocean and measuring what bounces back at us, we can map underwater landscapes or dense rainforest canopies that would otherwise remain invisible. In each case, the principle is the same. When a system is too complex or too dark or too hidden to observe directly, an echo can reveal to us what our eyes can't see. So, the researchers at Google were able to do something similar with quantum computers. A signal is sent through an enormously complex quantum system consisting of more than 100 qubits. During its journey, researchers introduce a tiny disturbance. It's a microscopic change that then spreads through the system. They then reverse the entire process, causing the signal to travel backward. When the returning signal encounters the original one, interference patterns begin to emerge, and these patterns look like an echo. They reveal hidden information about the system's internal structure. By examining the echo, researchers can learn things that would otherwise remain invisible. Now, what makes this idea so fascinating is that it resembles an ancient psychological theory about consciousness. Carl Jung believed that every human being contains a vast unconscious realm that exists beyond ordinary awareness. According to Jung, the conscious mind is only a small island surrounded by an immense ocean of psychological activity. Beneath our awareness lies a world of forgotten memories, suppressed emotions, instinctive drives, archetypal patterns, and latent possibilities. While our conscious mind focuses on the immediate demands of everyday life, the unconscious continues to observe and process and connect information in the background. Jung often spoke about the unconscious as though it possessed its own perspective. It notices things before we do. It recognizes contradictions that we tend to ignore. It detects emotional conflicts that we refuse to acknowledge, but most importantly, it attempts to communicate these insights through its own echoes, and these are dreams. To Jung, dreams are psychological echoes, even though he didn't use those words exactly, but they were sent upwards from the depths of the psyche. They aren't necessarily literal messages, but symbolic ones. The unconscious speaks a different language from the conscious. It communicates through images, metaphors, emotions, and stories rather than direct statements. When you see this, you can understand how it sounds like the echoes that we've been talking about. Just as Google's quantum computer sends a signal into a hidden system and receives information in return, the human mind may descend into sleep and receive signals from regions of itself that are normally inaccessible when you're awake. The dream becomes an interference pattern created by the interaction between conscious awareness and unconscious processes. It is the visible result of an invisible conversation taking place beneath the surface of experience. This idea helps explain why dreams often feel so strange to us. If the unconscious were simply presenting information directly, dreams would look like ordinary waking thoughts. Instead, they arrive wrapped in symbolism, just like the bat doesn't actually see what the inside of the cave looks like, only a representation of it. A dream about a collapsing house may have nothing to do with actual architecture. A dream about being chased may have nothing to do with actual physical danger. The images themselves are often less important than the emotional truths that they represent. The unconscious appears to communicate through symbols because symbols are capable of expressing layers of meaning that ordinary language just can't. Jung noticed that many of his patients experienced dreams that seemed to understand them better than they understood themselves. People would dream about problems they hadn't consciously recognized. They would encounter symbolic warnings months before a psychological crisis emerged. Sometimes a dream would reveal a hidden fear, an unresolved conflict, or an emotional wound that had remained invisible for years. The dream didn't create the problem. Instead, it exposed something that was already there, just hidden in plain sight. This is what makes dreaming so difficult for us to dismiss. Even if every dream originates entirely within the brain, the question still remains: why is the brain generating them at all? Why devote so much energy to constructing these elaborate symbolic worlds every single night? Why does evolution preserve a process that consumes thousands of hours across a human lifetime if it serves no real purpose? It's then logical to suppose that dreams might serve a purpose far more profound than simple entertainment during sleep. Perhaps they are just part of a navigational system. As a bat uses echolocation to move through darkness, the mind may use dreams to navigate regions of itself that can't be directly observed. The unconscious sends signals upward. Consciousness receives them. The resulting dream becomes a map of hidden territory. And if that's true, then every night we participate in a process far stranger than we realize. We assume that sleep is a period of absence, a temporary shutdown of consciousness before waking life resumes. But what if sleep isn't an absence at all? What if it's a journey inwards? What if dreams are the echoes that return from places within ourselves that we rarely encounter during the day? Because if dreams truly are psychological echoes, then every dream carries the possibility of revelation. Every dream may contain information that consciousness has overlooked. Every dream may be evidence that another intelligence exists within us, patiently observing from the darkness and waiting for an opportunity to speak. Most dreams disappear almost immediately after waking. Within minutes, their details begin to dissolve. By lunchtime, only fragments remain. A face without a name, a place that never existed, a feeling that lingers long after the images themselves have vanished. Yet, every so often, a dream behaves differently. Instead of fading, it embeds itself into memory with extraordinary force. Years later, the dream remains as vivid as the day it first happened. Sometimes people remember the colors, the atmosphere, even specific details that would normally be forgotten. More importantly, they often describe the dream as having changed them. Carl Jung became fascinated by these experiences. He called them big dreams. Unlike ordinary dreams, big dreams seem to arrive from deeper layers of the psyche. They possess an unusual emotional gravity the dreamer often wakes with the unmistakable feeling that something important has happened, even if they can't immediately understand what it means. Jung observed that these dreams frequently appeared during major transitions in life. They emerged before psychological crisis, before profound personal transformations, and before moments when an individual stood at a crossroads without fully realizing it. What makes these dreams so powerful isn't necessarily their content. Sometimes the imagery is surprisingly simple. A person encounters a mysterious stranger, or a bridge collapses. A door opens into an unfamiliar room. On the surface, nothing extraordinary is occurring, and yet, the dream seems to contain more meaning than its images can account for. It feels charged with significance, as though it were carrying information from a deeper source. And this brings us back to the idea of the quantum echo. One of the most fascinating aspects of Google's experiment involved what physicists call a perturbation. Before reversing the signal, researchers introduced a tiny disturbance into the quantum system. The change was almost absurdly small. A single qubit was altered. Yet this microscopic modification propagated throughout the entire system. By examining how the disturbance evolved and interacted with the returning signal, researchers were able to uncover hidden structures that couldn't be observed directly. The entire process depended on something remarkably counterintuitive. A tiny cause leading to a disproportionately large result. In other words, the butterfly effect. Dreams often seem to operate according to a similar principle. A single image in a dream can alter the course of a person's life, just as a butterfly flapping its wings in a rainforest may, through an invisible chain of consequences, change weather patterns on the other side of the planet. The image itself may appear trivial, yet it functions like a psychological perturbation, introducing new information into our consciousness. Once the signal arrives, it begins spreading through the system. The dreamer reflects on it and questions emerge. Assumptions are challenged. Long-ignored feelings begin demanding our attention. What started as a fleeting image gradually transforms into a whole new way of seeing reality. Jung believed that this occurs because dreams reveal patterns that consciousness has failed to recognize. While our waking attention focuses on immediate concerns, the unconscious continuously gathers this information. It notices subtle changes in mood. It tracks recurring emotional conflicts. It detects contradictions between our stated beliefs and our actual behavior. Over time, these observations accumulate into a picture that may be far more complete than the one available to our own conscious awareness. Modern neuroscience actually offers a very interesting parallel. At any given moment, your brain is processing vastly more information than you consciously experience. Most of this activity never enters our direct awareness. Countless signals are filtered out before they reach conscious thought, and yet those signals don't disappear. They continue to influence our behavior from beneath the surface. In fact, actually, experiments have repeatedly suggested that the brain begins moving towards a decision before the conscious mind becomes aware of making one. The feeling of choosing may arrive after the process has already begun. Consciously, it seems, it's often less like the author of our own thoughts and more like a translator, trying to catch up to a story that is already unfolding. So this creates a very intriguing possibility. Perhaps dreams are one of the mechanisms through which hidden information reaches our consciousness. Perhaps they represent moments where the brain attempts to communicate conclusions that it has already reached unconsciously. Consider how often people describe realizing something through a dream that they somehow already knew. The dream isn't necessarily revealing new information to us, but instead it reorganizes existing information into a form that can finally be understood by us. A person dreams about a crumbling building and suddenly recognizes the instability of a relationship. Another dreams about a missing train and realizes they are terrified of wasting their life. The insight feels surprising yet strangely familiar at the same time. The dream acts as an echo, carrying hidden knowledge back to the surface. This idea becomes even more fascinating when we consider reports of dreams that appear to predict future events. And human history is filled with these stories of prophetic dreams. Kings consulted dream interpreters before making political decisions. Military leaders delayed campaigns because of ominous visions had during sleep. Entire religious traditions developed around the belief that dreams could reveal future possibilities to us. Modern people tend to dismiss such accounts as superstition, and yet the phenomenon itself has never fully disappeared. Even today, countless individuals report dreams that seem uncannily predictive. They dream about conversations before they happen. They dream about accidents, illnesses, or unexpected encounters that later happen in real life. Now, most of these stories can be explained through coincidence, or selective memory, or the tendency to reinterpret events after the fact. Human beings are excellent pattern-seeking creatures, and we often connect unrelated events into meaningful narratives. And yet, there may be another explanation that isn't mystical as dreams predicting the future, but perhaps even more interesting. Imagine that the unconscious mind is constantly analyzing information before conscious awareness. It notices subtle tensions in a relationship long before you realize the toxicity. It detects signs of physical illness before symptoms become obvious. It recognizes patterns in behavior that point towards future outcomes. If a dream emerges from this deeper level of analysis, it may appear prophetic without requiring any supernatural mechanisms. The unconscious may simply be better at prediction than our consciousness. A skilled chess player can often sense the direction of a game several moves in advance, even without actively having to think about it. If you were to ask them, they maybe wouldn't necessarily be able to explain how they know, but years of pattern recognition allows them to anticipate future possibilities. Perhaps the unconscious functions in a similar way. It models reality, generating predictions based on information that never reaches conscious awareness. If this is true, then the dream isn't showing us the future, it's showing us a future. One possible trajectory among many, an echo of where our current path may lead. Jung found this possibility deeply compelling because it transformed dreams from passive experiences into active guides. The dream was no longer a reflection of the past, it became a tool for navigating the present and a vision for the future. And this may explain why certain dreams feel less like memories and more like messages. The dream isn't merely replaying information to us, it's reorganizing it into a form that consciousness can understand. And sometimes the signal is so powerful that it becomes impossible to ignore. But if we agree that dreams are echoes, then the next logical question becomes, what is the source of the echo itself? And this is where things start to get a lot stranger. Because eventually we arrive at a mystery that has troubled philosophers, mystics, and psychologists for centuries. A mystery hidden inside the simplest question imaginable. What exactly happens to consciousness when we fall asleep? At first, the question sounds simple. We assume we already know the answer. The brain enters different stages of activity, dreams emerge and disappear, and then we wake up. But the more closely we examine the experience of sleep, the stranger it becomes. Consider what happens every single night. You lie down in bed, you close your eyes, and gradually you lose awareness of the world. The room disappears, sounds fade into the background, and thoughts become fragmented. Then at some point, your consciousness itself seems to vanish. Hours pass, and yet from your perspective, no time has passed at all. This is one of the most overlooked mysteries in human existence. We spend nearly a third of our lives asleep, but we rarely stop to consider what that actually means. During waking life, experience unfolds continuously. One moment leads to another. There's a sense of duration, of movement, and persistence. Even when we're bored, the consciousness remains present. But dreamless sleep appears different. There's no through line, no story, no memory, no awareness of passing time. One moment, you are falling asleep, and the next you are waking up. Between these 2 points lies an apparent void, a gap in existence. The philosopher Schopenhauer once compared sleep to a temporary return to the state that existed before birth. More modern thinkers have described it as a kind of nightly death, an interruption in the stream of conscious experience so complete that it raises uncomfortable questions about personal identity itself. After all, if consciousness completely disappears each night, what exactly returns in the morning? Well, the answer seems obvious. You return. But when examined carefully, the certainty begins to weaken. The self feels continuous because memory creates continuity. You remember who you are. You remember yesterday. You remember falling asleep. Those memories create the impression of an uninterrupted existence, and yet the actual experience of dreamless sleep remains inaccessible. Consciousness seems to vanish entirely. Some traditions have embraced this mystery rather than avoiding it. In ancient Greece, sleep and death were represented as twin brothers. Across many cultures, sleep was understood as a temporary journey into the unknown, a brief departure from ordinary reality. Even today, there is something unsettling about surrendering our consciousness. Every night we willingly allow the most intimate aspects of our existence to dissolve into darkness. The philosopher Thomas Nagel once asked what it was like to be a bat. His point was that conscious experience possesses a subjective quality that can't be fully explained from the outside. We know what it feels like to be ourselves because we experience it directly. But what does it feel like to be unconscious? The question can't be answered because there is no one there to answer it. Dreaming at least provides content. Dreams are experiences. However strange they may be, there is still a world being perceived. Dreamless sleep offers something entirely different. It appears to be the absence of a world altogether. And yet, consciousness somehow returns at the end of it all. Each morning, awareness reassembles itself. The universe comes back online. The familiar narrative of I resumes exactly where it left off. Why? What determines that consciousness returns at all? Most scientific explanations focus on brain activity. Certain neural networks deactivate while others remain active. Various regions coordinate the transition between wakefulness and sleep, and these explanations are valuable, but they leave a deeper philosophical question unanswered. Why does subjective experience emerge from this process in the first place? Why is there something like consciousness? And where does that something go when consciousness disappears? Carl Jung approached this mystery from a very unique angle. Late in life, Jung recorded one of the strangest dreams of his career. Unlike many of his other dreams, this one seemed to challenge his understanding of identity itself. In the dream, Jung found himself standing inside of a temple. There, seated in deep meditation, was a yogi. The figure appeared ancient, serene, and completely absorbed in contemplation. As Jung observed the meditator, he gradually noticed something troubling. The yogi had Jung's face. The realization struck him with immense force. At first, Jung assumed he was observing another version of himself. Then a more disturbing possibility emerged. What if the relationship was reversed? What if the yogi was not being dreamed by Jung? What if Jung was being dreamed by the yogi? The dream produced an overwhelming insight. the meditating figures seem to exist at a deeper level of reality than the conscious personality that Jung identified with. The ordinary Jung, the man moving through daily life, suddenly felt like a secondary character, almost fictional. He sensed that if the yogi were ever to awaken, Jung himself would disappear. That dream haunted him for years, because beneath its bizarre imagery lies a profound philosophical question. What if the conscious self is not the deepest layer of identity? What if the person that you think you are exists only at the surface? Modern psychology often describes consciousness as a small fraction of mental activity. Most cognitive processes occur outside of awareness. Decisions begin unconsciously before they enter consciousness. Emotions emerge from systems that we can't directly control. Perceptions are constructed by mechanisms operating beyond our awareness. Like I said earlier, the conscious self may be less like a ruler and more like a translator. Jung's dream takes this idea to its logical extreme. Imagine that your waking identity is only the visible portion of a much larger process. Imagine that beneath your everyday awareness exists a deeper intelligence, one so vast that your conscious personality represents only a temporary expression of it. In that case, falling asleep wouldn't mean consciousness disappears, it would mean consciousness retreats from one level of reality to another. The dreamer would become the dreamed. The observer would become the observed. The self would discover that it is part of something larger than itself. This possibility appears repeatedly through human history. Mystics describe awakening from the illusion of individuality. Eastern philosophies speak of the ego as a temporary construction rather than an ultimate reality. Certain religious traditions portray ordinary consciousness as a dream from which deeper awareness eventually emerges. Of course, none of this proves that such ideas are true, but their similarity across cultures with no interaction to one another is striking. Across different cultures, centuries, and belief systems, people repeatedly arrive at the same intuition. The feeling that the self we experience every day may not be the deepest level of the self that exists. Perhaps this is why sleep feels so mysterious. Every night we are approaching a boundary. On one side lies the familiar world of waking consciousness. On the other lies a territory that we barely understand. Dreams emerge from that territory, carrying symbols, warnings, insights, and strange fragments of meaning. Yet beyond the dreams themselves lies something even more elusive, the darkness from which they emerge. And if dreams are echoes, then perhaps the most important question isn't what the echoes mean to us. Perhaps the real question is what's creating them. Anyone who has experienced a vivid dream knows how convincing they can be. While the dream is happening, it rarely feels imaginary. The dream world possesses its own internal logic, its own physics, and its own sense of reality. We accept impossible events without question. We speak to people who have been dead for years or who have never existed. We visit places that don't exist. We watch entire narratives unfold. Yet throughout the experience, everything feels perfectly normal to us. It's only after waking that we recognize how strange it all was. And this creates an interesting problem. How do you know you're awake right now? Well, at first, the answer seems obvious. Pinch yourself. Reality feels stable. The laws of physics behave consistently. Memory connects one moment to the next. Unlike dreams, our waking life appears coherent. But dreams often feel coherent while we are inside them. In fact, one of the more troubling experiences a person can have is what psychologists call a false awakening. The dreamer wakes up inside a dream, and everything appears normal. You are back inside your bedroom, and your bedroom looks correct. So your morning routine begins. Reality seems perfectly intact. Then something impossible happens. The dreamer realizes they are still asleep. Sometimes this process repeats multiple times. A person wakes up only to discover that they are dreaming. Then they wake up again, and again. Each layer feels more convincing than the last. These experiences are often called nesting dreams. People who have undergone them frequently describe a profound sense of disorientation afterwards. For a brief period, the boundary between dream and reality feels uncertain. If the previous layer felt real while it was happening, what guarantees that the current layer is any different? Well, philosophers have been haunted by this question for centuries. In the 17th century, René Descartes famously wondered whether any experience could prove with certainty that he was awake. Every test he devised encountered the same problem. Dreams could imitate nearly everything he experienced during waking life. If a dream can reproduce sight and sound, touch, memory, emotion, and narrative continuity, then what criterion remains for distinguishing one state from the other? The question remains surprisingly difficult to answer. Most of us rely on practical certainty. We assume we're awake because reality behaves consistently over time. And yet, from a purely subjective perspective, consciousness experiences both states directly. The dream feels real while it lasts. Waking life feels real while it lasts. This is where the metaphor of the quantum echo becomes particularly interesting. One way to think of dreams is as a simulation. Modern neuroscience increasingly suggests that the brain functions as a prediction engine. Rather than passively observing reality, it continuously generates models of the world and updates them using incoming information. In a sense, the brain is always simulating reality. Perception itself may be partly constructed from internal predictions. Dreaming appears to take this tendency even further. During sleep, external sensory input decreases dramatically. The brain becomes free to generate entire worlds from within. It creates environments, characters, conflicts, and whole scenarios. It runs simulations. Many researchers believe this serves an adaptive purpose. Dreams may help us rehearse threats. They may allow us to explore social situations in a safe environment. They may help consolidate memories, process emotions, and prepare for future challenges. In this view, dreaming is less like watching a movie and more like playing the training area in a video game. The sleeping mind generates possibilities and examines their consequences. It experiments, it explores, and it asks questions. What happens to us if this relationship ends? Or what happens to me if I fail to reach my goal? Or what happens if my biggest fear becomes true? The dream becomes a laboratory for consciousness. But then, many people also report experiences that feel far longer than the actual duration of the dream. Some describe living through years of subjective experience. Others report entire alternative lives complete with relationships, histories, and their own memories. When they wake, the emotional impact can be overwhelming. There are accounts of people mourning dream families that never existed. Others struggle to reconcile memories from dreams with memories from waking life. For a brief period, both seem equally real. Such experiences reveal something remarkable about consciousness. Reality isn't simply something we observe. Reality is something that we construct. The world you experience is always filtered through the brain's interpretation of information. Dreams demonstrate just how powerful that interpretive process can become. Given the right conditions, the mind can create worlds capable of rivaling reality. And this raises such a provocative possibility. What if waking consciousness itself is only one level within a larger hierarchy? After all, every dream feels real until a higher level of awareness appears. The dreamer wakes and suddenly recognizes the dream for what it was. The previous reality is revealed as a construction nestled within a broader reality. But what if the process doesn't stop? What if waking consciousness is simply another layer? This idea appears in countless philosophical and spiritual traditions. Plato imagined an ordinary reality as shadows projected onto a cave wall. Hindu philosophy describes the world as Maya, a veil of appearances. Mystics throughout history have spoken of awakening from ordinary consciousness into a more fundamental reality. Again, these traditions differ enormously in their details, yet they often converge on a similar intuition that the reality that we take for granted may not be the deepest reality available to us. Dreams provide a glimpse of how such a thing could be possible. Every night, consciousness effortlessly generates convincing worlds. Every morning, it abandons them and moves into another. The transition feels natural because we have experienced it thousands of times. But perhaps we have become too accustomed to the miracle. Perhaps the truly astonishing fact is not that dreams feel real. Perhaps the astonishing fact is that reality itself feels real. The same consciousness that constructs dream worlds is the consciousness through which you experience everything else. The same mind capable of creating entire universes during sleep is the mind through which your waking world appears. And if dreams are echoes emerging from deeper layers of the psyche, then maybe they serve another purpose as well. And maybe they remind us that reality is more fragile, more mysterious, and more dependent upon consciousness than we usually imagine. Because once you realize that entire worlds can emerge from the mind, another question becomes impossible to ignore. If dreams can alter our experience of space and reality, what about our experience of time? There's one final aspect of the quantum echo that makes it such a powerful metaphor for dreaming. The output of Google's experiment is something physicists call an out-of-time ordered correlator, or OTOC. Despite the intimidating name, the basic idea is surprisingly simple. An OTOC measures how information spreads through a complex system over time. It reveals how different parts of the system influence one another across both space and time, exposing relationships that would otherwise remain hidden. In other words, the quantum echo is not merely telling researchers what a system looks like. It is revealing how events separated in time are connected. For a physicist, this is a technical tool. For anyone interested in dreams, it is an irresistible metaphor, because one of the strangest features of dreaming is its relationship with time. Dreams seem to obey entirely different temporal rules from waking life. Hours can pass in seconds. Entire narratives can unfold within moments. Past experiences merge with imagined futures. Events separated by decades appear side by side as though they're occurring simultaneously. The ordinary flow of time becomes fluid, almost irrelevant. Many people have experienced dreams that they feel as though they exist outside chronology altogether. Childhood memories blend seamlessly with present concerns. Future anxieties appear as symbolic landscapes. Long-dead relatives speak about events that have not yet happened. The dream mind moves through time the way a person might move through rooms in a house in a non-linear fashion. This is one reason dreams have always seemed prophetic to us. What matters isn't whether every claim is true. What matters is that the experience itself feels profoundly convincing to those who are experiencing it. The dream creates the impression that consciousness has briefly escaped the normal flow of time. Carl Jung became fascinated by this possibility. While he remained cautious about supernatural explanations, he also recognized that human experience sometimes contains coincidences so meaningful that they become rather difficult to easily resist. He referred to these events as synchronicities. They weren't necessarily examples of mystical causation. Instead, they seemed to be examples of connection, inner experiences and outer events aligning in ways that felt deeply significant. Dreams often occupy the center of these stories. A person dreams of an old friend and unexpectedly encounters them the next day. Someone dreams of a major life transition shortly before it actually arrives. A symbolic image appears repeatedly until an event finally gives it meaning. Whether these experiences represent unconscious prediction or something stranger, they produce the same feeling. The sense that consciousness may perceive patterns extending beyond the present moment. Perhaps this is because the unconscious experiences time differently. Your conscious mind lives almost entirely in the present from moment to moment. It focuses on immediate tasks, or immediate threats, or immediate goals. The unconscious operates on a broader scale. It integrates years of memories, emotional associations, and behavioral patterns. It continuously models possible futures based on available information. From this perspective, the unconscious resembles an extraordinarily sophisticated predictive engine. It is constantly asking questions. Where is this relationship heading? What happens to me if these habits continue? What future emerges from the choices that are being made today? And the answers to those questions arrive as dreams. An experienced sailor often predicts a storm hours before it arrives. The prediction doesn't require supernatural knowledge. It emerges from sensitivity to subtle patterns invisible to inexperienced voyagers. Perhaps dreams function similarly. Perhaps what feels like prophecy is just really good pattern recognition operating beneath awareness. Yet even this explanation leaves some mystery behind. Why does the unconscious communicate to us through stories? Why dreams? Why not simply present these conclusions directly? The answer may lie in the nature of consciousness itself. Facts can change behavior less effectively than experiences can. A person can intellectually understand a problem for years without taking action. A powerful dream can communicate the same truth in a single night. And let's be honest, facts do not change people's minds. Feelings do. Dreams are a powerful way to shape those feelings. The dream succeeds because it doesn't merely tell us something, it's allowing us to experience something. And this brings us back to the central idea of the quantum echo. So let's go back to a bat flying through a cave. The bat can't see the darkness directly, it can't observe every wall or every tunnel or every obstacle. Instead, it is sending signals outward and listening carefully to what comes back to it. The echoes then create a map. The invisible then becomes visible. The unknown becomes navigable. Perhaps dreams serve a similar function. The human psyche is too vast to fully comprehend. Beneath conscious awareness lies an immense landscape of memories, instincts, fears, desires, archetypes, and possibilities. We can't directly observe most of it. We can't walk through it the way we would walk through a city. It remains hidden from us in darkness. So, the mind sends a signal into itself. Dreams are what come back to us. They're echoes generated by the interaction between conscious awareness and unconscious depths. They reveal hidden structures. They expose emotional truths. They forecast possible futures. They guide adaptation and growth. Sometimes they warn. Sometimes they comfort. Sometimes they confront us with realities that we would rather avoid. But they always remind us of the same thing. We are larger than we appear. The conscious self feels like the center of identity, and yet it may be only the surface of a much deeper process. Every night, that deeper process becomes visible for a few brief hours. Images emerge from darkness. Stories rise from hidden regions in the mind. Signals travel upward from places we rarely encounter during the day. But then, morning arrives. The dream dissolves. The ordinary world returns to us. Emails need answering. Conversations need to be had. Life resumes its familiar rhythm. Yet somewhere beneath that routine, the deeper mind is continuing its work. It continues observing. It continues connecting. It continues to generate echoes. And tonight, when you fall asleep, the process will begin again. Your conscious world will fade. The darkness will return. And from somewhere beyond the boundaries of ordinary awareness, another signal will start its journey back towards the surface. The question is whether you're going to listen. Because if dreams are quantum echoes of the soul, then sleep is not an escape from reality. It's a conversation within the hidden parts of ourselves that reality often keeps silent. And every dream is an answer to a question we didn't know that we were asking. We've only just scratched the surface of the research that discovered the concept of quantum echoes. Watch this video to learn all there is to know about it and how it transformed quantum computing.
Imagine you're flying, feeling the cold air on your skin, flooded by light. You look down and see a sandy beach peppered with palm trees, and you decide to go there. Suddenly you're on the beach drinking a pina colada, but you're alone. Wouldn't it be nice if somebody was there with you? And then suddenly your best friend appears. It's comforting and warm, a feeling you know you've been craving because you've been struggling at work recently. You're grateful for their encouragement and for the pina colada. It's your favorite drink after all. You take a deep breath and enjoy the beauty of the moment. But it isn't a vacation, it isn't a game or a VR headset. It's a dream that you know you're in, a dream that you can control. The beach, the drink, the friend, you made it all happen. Because you're lucid dreaming. Lucid dreaming occurs when a sleeper is aware they're in a dream and can exercise some control over the environment of the dream. In a regular dream, we're aware of objects and events within the dream itself, but we're not aware that we're dreaming. We can't distinguish between being asleep and being awake. Lucid dreaming isn't anything new, it's a phenomenon that's been reported throughout history, but only scientifically documented since 1975. And a lot is still unknown about it. Why it happens, how to induce it, and what effects it might have on us individually and as a species. Some scientists believe that lucid dreaming comes from increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, and unlike non-lucid dreams that can take place anytime while we're sleeping, lucid dreaming happens during our rapid eye movement or REM sleep cycle, our fourth and final, deepest stage of normal sleep. But the biggest thing that those of us who haven't had the pleasure of lucid dreaming are wondering is, what's it like? Lucid dreamers have described feeling like they're playing a virtual reality game where they have some control over aspects of their scene and setting. These dreams can also leave lasting impressions that might be stronger than those we experience when we're awake. Most of us have had the experience of waking up from a dream, even one we can't fully remember, and feeling somehow changed from it. With lucid dreaming, that change or impact we might feel is much more visceral. Some lucid dreamers have talked about their dreams in religious terms, like an out-of-body experience. Some even say it feels like being temporarily abducted by aliens and transported to a different planet, like you're in your own personal video game. But one of the most interesting aspects of lucid dreaming is the emotional revelations that can happen in them. In a lucid dream, you might be introduced to elements of yourself you might not see otherwise. You might see yourself more sympathetically, kinder, braver, or more sensitive than you'd like to admit or take credit for in reality. In this sense, lucid dreams might offer some introspection that many of us hesitate to ponder in our waking lives. Now it all might sound pretty amazing and you might be envious if you've never experienced a lucid dream, because I know I am. And we're not alone in that envy. There's a subreddit with more than 400,000 members dedicated to the subject of lucid dreaming. However, only 23% of the population experience lucid dreams on a monthly basis, and less than 1% of people are what scientists call proficient lucid dreamers. People who can easily sink into and manipulate their lucid dreams. But the good news is that a majority of adults, 55%, claim to have experienced at least one lucid dream in their lifetime. So if you haven't had one yet, the odds are in your favor. And if you want to up the odds, here are some things you can do to pave the way to your lucid dream journey. First is to optimize your bedroom for sleeping. Good sleep hygiene is key to lucid dreams. 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18 degrees Celsius is considered the ideal sleep temperature, and it's important to keep your room relatively quiet and dark. Invest in some blackout curtains, sleep masks, or other accessories to reduce light, and consider using earplugs or a sound machine to block out disruptive noise. Another critical element to lucid dreaming is what researchers call reality testing. This consists of checking in with your environment and confirming whether you're asleep or awake. We all know that our dream environments can look familiar to our waking reality, but there's always some minor inconsistencies compared to reality. Performing these reality checks while we're awake can give us the skills to determine when we're in a dream. Reality testing is specifically helpful when something odd happens in your waking life. If you see a strange animal cross the street in front of your car, take a moment. Think about the fact that you're awake and that the animal is real and that this odd moment is happening in your life. Developing that critical frame of mind when you're awake will ideally carry over into your dream state. Reality checks can also be quite simple, like pressing your fingers against your palm and feeling the resistance of your hand. In a dream, you might notice that your fingers go through your hand, and at that point, you'll know you're not in reality where scientific laws apply. Or take note of being in your waking reality when you're reading, because in dreams, written words often appear jumbled. It can also be helpful to wake yourself up after 5 hours of sleeping and simply tell yourself to remember you're dreaming when you go back to sleep. Research has found that this technique is most effective if you can stay awake for 30 to 120 minutes before sleeping again. Another tactic you may already be doing is keeping a dream journal. Recording our dreams helps us recognize dreams more easily, since many of our dreams or elements of them repeat. You might want to write down what you remember the moment you wake up, or even record a voice note on your phone to rattle off bits and pieces that come to mind. As interest in lucid dreaming has grown and these kinds of tips have proliferated on the internet, a whole industry has grown around the goal of lucid dreaming. There are now sleep masks and headbands you can buy that produce noises, flash lights, or vibrate to inject stimulation into your dreams. These are methods used by researchers on lucid dreaming subjects. There are online tutorials, some helpful and some from people simply looking to capitalize on the craze around lucid dreaming. And there are even supplements that have been shown to induce lucid dreaming. The drug alkaloid galantamine has been used in research in home settings to encourage lucid dreams. One study showed that participants who took the drug after being woken up and practicing visualization were more likely to lucid dream than participants who received a placebo. Galantamine is already available over the counter as a supplement, and many lucid dreamers say that it helps them stay in the dream longer and have more control over elements of their dreams. Of course, some view using drugs as cheating, just as you would with any performance-enhancing substance in sports. But proficient lucid dreamers rightly stress that whether you use a supplement or not, you need to practice lucid dreaming using other methods. Simply popping pills won't get you there. But if you do manage to get there, into a lucid dream, what do you do? Once we're lucid dreaming, we want to use that moment to control where the dream goes and try to assert influence over what happens. This works better if, instead of willing something to happen, we simply expect it to. Imagine you're back on the beach with your friend and you want a beautiful sea turtle to come climbing out of the water. Instead of insisting that the turtle will show up, expect it to be there. Once you do, a sea turtle or something close to it will probably appear. That expectancy effect can help things appear in our dreams. If we say, "I'll find the dog behind the couch," when we look behind the couch, the dog will be there. Experienced lucid dreamers can also open doors in their dreams and envision what they want to be on the other side of the door. Perhaps you can open a door and transport yourself from the sunny beach into the middle of outer space. Most of what we know about lucid dreams comes from the early stages of research into the topic and from those who can have the dreams. We still don't have a great understanding of the neural underpinnings of lucid dreams or the brain processes that make them happen, and at this point we don't have a reliable way to induce them. But even with so much unknown, we do know that there are benefits to lucid dreaming. At the very least, a lucid dream can act as a sort of wish fulfillment, taking us to places or putting us in situations we've always wished we could experience. Lucid dreaming can also help us shed the stress of daily life. It's been clinically shown to be a potential treatment for pervasive nightmares, and data shows that lucid dreaming can foster creativity. Even athletes will employ lucid dreams to work on and refine motor skills. Most of all, lucid dreams allow us to interact and explore parts of our unconscious that we can't when we're in our regular dreams, or even while we're awake. Of course, this level of awareness in our unconscious state can present its own problems. Skeptics worry that lucid dreaming can have a negative impact on mental health, not only because it can disturb sleep, but also because it can blur the lines between reality and fantasy. Remember the reality testing tactic to induce lucid dreams. While it might help some distinguish between waking and dreaming, it might also make others question whether they're awake or asleep. This would be disorienting. It could lead to a feeling of dissociation where they feel disconnected from their thoughts, feelings, and sense of identity. Still, the curiosity around lucid dreaming is impossible to resist, and not just for you or me, but for researchers. In an effort to answer the question of what exactly is happening when we have lucid dreams and how to better understand how to trigger them, researchers have invited proficient lucid dreamers into their labs. Once the participants are asleep, researchers measure activity levels in the prefrontal cortex and other areas. The participants are told to use left and right eye movement once they're in a lucid dream and aware that they're dreaming. This way, researchers can see what brain activity is happening in the brain at that very moment. Studies also tell us that the events we experience in our dreams produce effects on our brains that are similar to what would happen if we experienced them during our waking hours, and if that's true, then it would mean that dreaming of doing something is the equivalent of actually doing it. That might be a stretch if we're talking about like going to Mars or breathing underwater, but if it's a meaningful conversation with someone or tasting a new delicious food, maybe we could take the feeling and carry it with us into our reality. Because lucid dreaming might not just be about experiencing our dreams differently, it might be the key to understanding our own consciousness. English aristocrat and writer Mary Arnold Foster wrote one of the earliest and most detailed descriptions of lucid dreaming in her book Studies in Dreams. She described her attempts to fly, and she proposed that humans have dual consciousness. One is our primary self, which analyzes our circumstances and applies logic to our experiences. For most of us, this consciousness is typically enacted during sleep, but according to Foster, this primary self wakes up in lucid dreams and brings memories, knowledge, and reasoning from our waking life, along with the awareness that we're asleep. This idea of dual consciousness may not be scientific enough today, but researchers would agree that lucid dreams involve increased self-awareness and reflection. They give us the ability to think more deeply about our lives because we get to actively live outside of them. When we sleep, we still are who we are. Our brains are the same, but they're unconscious, so lucid dreams can provide a point of comparison to isolate the regions of the brain that are involved in the state of heightened self-awareness and agency. As much as many of us simply want to have cool dreams, lucid dreams aren't just about experiencing the feeling of flying or traveling to mystical places. They can have real scientific implications. If we're able to understand what's happening in the brain when it appears to be unconscious but is really aware, we can better treat brain injury patients who are unconscious. Doctors could establish these patients' levels of consciousness and treat them accordingly. If scientists can establish a neural signature of self-awareness by studying lucid dreamers, they can make more accurate diagnosis and prognosis. And what these ideas tell us is that lucid dreams are really about self-awareness. So even if you can't manage to get yourself into a lucid dream, you can still learn from them. Try to be more connected to your unconscious self, maybe not through a lucid dream, but through something more accessible, like meditation or other therapies in your waking life. Like all things, lucid dreaming takes practice. We have to approach the desire to lucid dream with a sense of calm. When we try to force it into existence, we lose the potential to find it altogether. So maybe we should start with a sense of curiosity, not just about what it would feel like to fly, but about what might be lurking in our own brain that we just haven't found yet. The mind can hold tremendous power over our bodies. People walking over burning coal with no sign of pain. Seemingly average people achieving feats of superhuman strength. Or even just the everyday person overcoming tremendous adversity. We've all heard the stories. This influence of the mind is often undermined and even brushed aside as wishful thinking. But how far can the power of the mind really go? How much can you really do simply with belief? Could you, for example, get rid of a headache just by thinking it off? Could you get fitter by just believing you exercised? How about reducing the symptoms of a disease without a cure? These things might sound too good to be true. But hear me out. There's actually a whole field of scientific, empirical research out there dedicated to this exact phenomenon. I'm talking about the placebo effect. It's generally understood as an effect where your mind tricks you into believing that a not-so-real treatment has real therapeutic results. People seem to experience a benefit after taking a look-alike pill or drug that has no active ingredients in it. Sometimes, the placebo effect can be induced by words alone. All this should have no medical effect on the patient, and yet, it does. There are different kinds of placebos too. Pills, drinks, injections. Interestingly, some of these placebos are more effective than others, but I'll get to that later. In most cases, people receiving placebos believe they're getting a real medical treatment. For example, in a clinical trial for COVID-19 prevention, a medical team chose a vitamin C supplement as the placebo. It was chosen as such because there's a widely held view that vitamin C supplements help prevent the common cold and diseases like COVID-19, even though there's almost no evidence to prove that that's really the case. In this instance, the general perception was enough to essentially hide the pills as placebos, whilst the rest of the medicines were actual treatments. Remarkably, however, in certain scenarios, placebos tend to work even when the patients receiving them know that it's only a sugar pill. Regardless, for the majority of the history of the placebo effect, deception has played a key role. In fact, the name placebo originates from the term placebo singers, people who, according to French custom, would show up at funerals. They almost never had anything to do with the deceased, and would only show up for a share of the funeral food and drinks. Funeral crashers, if you will. And they wouldn't just show up. They would express great sadness and despair at the loss of the deceased, to complete the act. This fake act to please is what the term placebo stood for a long, long time, before finally being introduced in the medical vernacular. The placebo effect is now common in the gold standard of rigorous medicinal practices. So how did this act of deception make its way to medical practice? Well, as with all good inventions, it started off with doubt. In the 1770s, John Haygarth, a British physician, was curious about the efficacy of Perkins rods. These were pointy metal rods that were supposed to draw out rheumatic fever and gout. Other than being absolute crap, this treatment was also expensive. Funny enough, Haygarth's doubt seemed to have been born out of a suspicion for the price rather than the ridiculousness of the procedure, which, to be fair, wasn't all that ridiculous back in those days anyway. But regardless, it was still enough for him to contest that similar results could be achieved using much cheaper rods. To prove his point, he used wooden rods instead of metal ones, and reported that 4 out of the 5 patients saw improvements. And thus, the placebo effect was formally observed for the first time. From there, scientists wondered what could have caused such a medicine-like effect in fake lookalikes, which shed light on the mechanisms of the body that the placebo effect relies upon. Here, the most prominent theory seems to be the idea that there is, and always has been, a correlation in the minds of patients about medical care and its results. Known for research into the placebo effect, Irving Kirsch attributes the placebo effect to self-fulfilling effects of the response expectancies. Pretty much, we expect medical care to do its job. You might wonder how true it is today, considering there is so much skepticism in certain healthcare practices. A patient cured is a customer lost. You've probably heard the quote before. Yet, for some reason, the expectation remains that if you're prescribed something by someone who is supposed to know what they're talking about, it's probably going to work. You and I are all conditioned to believe that when people take a pill, they want to get better. This association has seemingly more to do with the act of pill taking, or any medical intervention, rather than the contents of it. Besides, there is a case to be made that a caring physician can go a long way to relieve us of pain. Maybe not medical pain, but psychological pain. All these contribute towards our perception of a medical intervention. We don't necessarily see a pill as just a standalone chemical compound that we're supposed to swallow, but rather along with all the information about who gets it, how well it works, who prescribes it, and so on. Besides, the effect tends to vary depending on the nature of the intervention. For example, an injection is perceived to be more invasive than a pill, and, therefore, tends to induce a stronger placebo effect. And thus arises a new concern. If the simple act of taking a pill can benefit the user by relieving their pain, what reason is there to develop a medically active drug like a painkiller in the first place? Besides, a lot of these painkillers, like other medications, tend to carry a ton of possible side effects, and the potential for dependency and even drug abuse. Well, that's where the randomized double-blind placebo trial comes in. During the course of such a trial, a patient can be administered with either a medically active drug, the drug that's being tested, or a placebo, usually a sugar pill. And then both of these groups are compared to a group that does nothing. No pills, no drugs, no placebos. Neither patient nor researcher knows who gets what. It's completely randomized and blinded. This is done to control 2 things. 1. The possibility of getting unfair care from the medical professionals based on the knowledge of knowing who is getting the actual medication. And 2. Controlling the results to be based solely on the act of medical intervention taken. For example, giving them a pill, rather than the contents of the medicine itself. Only if a medicine is able to perform against a placebo in such a trial in a statistically significant manner is it even able to be considered for approval. Well, that certainly makes sense. You're testing a medicine against possible issues to be as certain as possible about its effectiveness, right? But these sort of tests are usually run when there's a certain ailment to cure in the first place. So, that means a part of the testing demographic is being withheld from a medicine that could potentially help them. As you can see, there's an ethical concern here. To go back to the example of the COVID-19 trial, imagine being promised by a group of researchers that they are working with promising medication that could reduce your chances of contracting the virus. But, lo and behold, a part of those subjects were given no such medication while being lied to, legal aspects aside. Obviously, you and I know that it's done for the greater good. Researchers generally take layers of precautions to prevent any serious damage, and as more evidence emerges, the know-nothing anxiety about the virus is now turning into just general caution. But still, how would you have felt if you were one of the people who were given the placebo? All this makes the waters a bit murky for placebo research. Besides, we know for a fact that even with illnesses where the placebo effect offers some comfort, the underlying problem that caused the discomfort, more often than not, goes untreated. Take asthma, for example. It's one of the chronic illnesses that has seen consistent improvement from the use of placebos. Some patients were put on trial with an inhaler with a drug called albuterol, designed to open airways. Others were put on an inhaler with a placebo, and others were given no intervention at all. At this point, you should not be surprised to find that the patients who were on the placebos self-reported a much higher level of comfort than those who were put on nothing. The placebo comfort scores followed those closely of the actual drug, but upon closer inspection, it turns out that the objective measures of lung function had only noticeably improved for patients who took the medically active drug, which makes sense. This tells us that the placebo does not alter our bodily mechanisms as much as it alters our subjective experiences, which is not to downplay their importance, of course. A lot of the time, illnesses like asthma are exacerbated not so much by the closing of the airways, but rather a heightened state of anxiety from a feeling of suffocation, which might explain why patients with no improvements in lung function still self-report them saying that they did. To answer the questions at the start, yes, a study regarding a drug called Maxalt has shown that simply the labeling of the drugs patients are taking allowed them to experience migraine attacks of reduced intensity. They were tricked into imagining that they took the migraine medication when they actually didn't, and it still worked. And yes, hotel cleaning staff that thought they had exercised through their regular work had all noticed significant changes to their body weight, waist to hip ratio, and even their blood pressure. And yes, patients with Parkinson's disease who were randomly switched to placebos still kept experiencing healing. This is all great news, as it opens up avenues of potential treatments and ways in which patients' quality of life can be improved. In fact, the placebo effect is seemingly getting bigger, which makes these findings all the more important. There are reasons to doubt the placebo effect, however. For instance, just as researchers might be inclined to nudge participants one way or another to affirm their own beliefs about the efficiency of a drug, participants too have their own set of biases. The Hawthorne effect talks about a scenario where participants alter their responses once they realize they're being observed. The novelty of the experience of being part of a trial, the increased attention, all these things might affect what a participant is saying, since so much of the effectiveness of the placebos have been derived from how the patients are feeling. In other words, their subjective experiences. This is a crucial and potentially experiment-changing variable. There's also the idea of regression to the mean, meaning the natural tendency of most patients to get better with time. They might incorrectly attribute this to natural improvement to the medicine they're taking, placebo or not. Additionally, if the magic of the placebo effect depends on our ability to make associations between medical care and relief, then I'm afraid it could also turn to sorcery. Known as the nocebo effect, this phenomenon describes a situation where the expectation of a negative outcome induces negative therapeutic results, the exact opposite of the placebo effect. For example, the same placebo has been found to raise blood pressure, heart rate, and induce sleepiness depending on whether it was given to the participants as a stimulant or a depressant. The changes were significant, mind you, in both cases. It's just that they were exactly opposite, and that's both fascinating and alarming. That's because it goes to show the power of such an association and how it could be used to improve so many lives. But on the other hand, it also makes you wonder how many people are miserable because they're thinking the wrong things. Take fad diets, for example. Once you have established that food A is incredibly harmful for you because someone on the internet said so, you start developing a very strong negative association. You start off by just avoiding that one food. But then you start reading labels and you find out that this has a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and you slowly start taking things off your plate. The result, almost always, is an unsustainable diet, not to mention possibly unhealthy. You end up miserable and in a constant battle against your will, a far cry from the healthy lifestyle you started the diet for in the first place. And the funny, or sad thing is, that said food may not have even been bad for you in the first place. It's remarkable how the history of the placebo effect has panned out. From hungry thieves who would do anything for a morsel, to treatments that were considered largely a failure against the rigors of the medical system. From the association with care that spans generations, to ethical qualms that still cast doubt, The placebo effect has come a long way, and if you have ever taken a clinically approved piece of medicine, chances are that it's probably helped you in one way or another. But the placebo effect has always been more than that. It's about medicine, sure, but it's also about us humans and how we respond to our stresses, and how important it is to just feel right. If so much is possible just by the power of imagination, then perhaps you're just a few good thoughts away from happiness. In case you've forgotten, at the end of the day, it's all in your head.
Consciousness doesn't make any sense. Sights, sounds, smells, textures, the warmth of love, the sting of sadness, the coldness of heartbreak. Why do we experience any of it? We've mapped out the entire observable universe, measured every single neuron in our brains, and we've even trained machines to think, speak, and act just like us. And still, we don't understand the most fundamental thing about human existence. Why does it feel like anything to be you? Why is there a little person inside of your head? And a story of your life that exists through time? Although it's something that every single person who has ever existed has experienced, consciousness is one of the most difficult things to explain or understand. Philosophers, mystics, scientists, and religious leaders have all come to the same uncomfortable conclusion. Consciousness isn't as straightforward as it appears. It unfolds in levels, and the deeper you go, the stranger it gets. So let's dive in. Level 1, deep sleep. It's the most ordinary, yet the most mysterious state of consciousness. We enter it every night without thinking, slipping past the edge of thought into a void, so empty that even the concept of it being a void disappears. The entire world dissolves, the self vanishes, and even dreams don't exist at this level. All there is a silent stillness that's vast and impenetrable. Although we experience this every night, it still exists beyond the realm of our understanding. Just like you can't understand what it's like to be blind by closing your eyes, you can't understand what deep sleep feels like by taking a nap. All we do know is that one moment you're awake, fully aware of your surroundings, and the next moment you're awake and fully aware of your surroundings. But for a few hours in between, you are nowhere, completely oblivious to your surroundings. According to neuroscience, you're in what's called the delta wave state. It's a deep, slow rhythm that's pulsing through your brain at less than 4 cycles per second. It's the body's most restorative mode, where the nervous system resets, tissues heal, and your memory consolidates. This state is a necessary maintenance cycle when the mind is turned off so that the body can heal itself. But on the inside, something far stranger is happening. In this state, experience itself ceases to exist. There is no space, no time, and no you. It's as if awareness folds back into its source the way an ocean wave returns to the sea and forgets that it ever rose, that it was ever a wave. Philosophers describe it as a kind of temporary annihilation, one without suffering or fear. It's like death being shy. You don't know that you're gone, and yet you awaken, and you somehow know that you were. That paradox, to be without being aware of being, has haunted even the greatest thinkers for centuries. In the Mandukya Upanishad, it's called Sushupti, a state where the self rests in its unmanifest form. Buddhists regard it as a glimpse of nirvana without enlightenment, while modern philosophers see it as the ground zero of consciousness, the point at which the line between awareness and non-awareness blurs. And yet, even here, the seed of consciousness exists. Something knows that nothing is happening, otherwise you would wake up each morning and you would be completely confused as to what had just happened. So it seems that even at this bottom layer, awareness is still there. it only withdraws, watching quietly from behind the curtain. In that sense, deep sleep is both an ending and a new beginning. It is the nightly death of self and the daily resurrection of consciousness. Each time you wake up, you're reborn from that void, carried upward through the layers of mind that rebuild your world anew. The dreamer reassembles, the senses reopen, and the illusion of continuity resumes. But for a few hours each night, you cease to exist. And that, perhaps, is the purest form of peace the mind may ever know, at least on this plane of existence. Beyond that layer of emptiness, there is creativity beyond human comprehension. Level 2. Dreaming. Fragments of thought begin to move. Images shimmer into existence, and without opening your eyes, you find yourself somewhere else entirely. This is dreaming, the first world consciousness creates for itself. In this realm, reality is all self-generated. The senses have shut down, and the body lies motionless. Yet, within the theater of the brain, entire universes are created. Mountains rise and vanish. Faces from memory blend with strangers whom you've never seen before. You experience an entire lifetime in a few minutes. One moment, you're flying through an endless sky, and the next, you're trapped in a room without any doors or windows. And the strangest thing of all is that it all feels real, or at least as real as your everyday waking life. From the scientific perspective, dreaming starts after deep sleep and during REM sleep, the phase of sleep in mammals that comes with rapid eye movements and more brain activity, which leads to more dreams. Your mind is flooded with emotions, imagination, and different narratives. Your body, for the most part, is still stuck in an unconscious state, but the mind is now free to wander, to explore the world it creates for itself without any boundaries. Philosophically, the dream acts as a mirror, a miniature version of existence itself. In Hindu philosophy, this is swapna, the inner world that reflects and distorts waking reality. The Greeks saw dreams as messages from the gods. Freud saw them as windows into the unconscious. Modern neuroscience calls them memory alchemy, where the brain mixes fragments of the day into symbolic narratives. Yet, none of these explanations capture the uncanny truth. When you dream, you are both the creator and the inhabitant of your world. Inside a dream, you are the laws of physics, the architecture of space, and the author of time. Every voice you hear is your own mind speaking back to you. Every face is carved from your memories. The dreamer and the dream are one and the same. You build a world, forget that you built it, and then wander through it as a character. But just like waking life, dreams carry emotion, consequence, and even transformation.